Let me tell you something real. If you wake up every day chasing results, numbers, applause, recognition, you're already distracted because results don't listen to you. They don't care how bad you want them. They don't respond to emotion. Control what you can control. That sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest disciplines to live by. Most people spend their lives stressed, anxious, and frustrated over things that were never in their hands to begin with. They wake up thinking about outcomes, money, wins, results, recognition, things that sit far ahead of today. But the truth is this: the outcome doesn't respond to pressure, emotion, or desire. It responds to preparation, and preparation lives in the process. The process is what you do when the future is uncertain and the reward is invisible. It's the daily work that doesn't make headlines, the habits that don't get applause, the repetition that feels boring but builds something unshakable. When you focus on outcomes, you skip steps, you rush, you cut corners, you start asking, how fast can I get there? Instead of how well can I do this today? And that mindset will always cost you more than it gives you. You can't control whether people recognize your effort, but you can control your consistency. You can't control how long it takes to succeed, but you can control how seriously you take the work right now. You can't control the final score, but you can control your preparation before the game ever starts. That's where real power lies. The moment you shift your attention from what might happen to what must be done, your energy changes. Your focus sharpens. Your excuses disappear. Outcomes create anxiety because they live in the future. The process creates confidence because it lives in the present. When you're locked into the process, you don't panic. When progress feels slow, you don't get distracted by what others are doing. You stop measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. You understand that mastery is built quietly, layer by layer, rep by rep, day by day. And nothing speeds that up. People fail not because they lack talent, but because they obsess over results they haven't earned yet. They want the title without the training, the success without the sacrifice, the reward without the routine. But life doesn't work that way. Life pays in proportion to discipline, not desire. When you commit to the process, you accept that growth is gradual and uncomfortable. You stop asking for guarantees and start building proof. Control the way you show up when no one is watching. Control your effort when motivation is gone. Control your attitude when things don't go your way. Control your preparation when doubt creeps in. These are the small decisions that compound into something powerful. They don't look impressive in the moment, but over time they separate those who last from those who quit. When pressure rises, people who focus on outcomes tighten up. They play not to lose instead of playing to grow. But people grounded in the process stay steady. They trust their work. They trust their habits. They trust the hours they've put in. That trust doesn't come from hoping, it comes from repetition. From doing the right things so many times that confidence becomes automatic. The process keeps you grounded when success comes and resilient when failure hits. It reminds you that one good day doesn't define you and one bad day doesn't break you. As long as you can control your actions, your effort, and your discipline, you're never out of the fight. The outcome will eventually take care of itself, but only if you take care of the work that leads to it. Fall in love with the daily discipline, because that's where everything you want is actually built. Not in big moments, not in viral wins, not in overnight success, but in the quiet. Repetitive actions you commit to every single day. Discipline isn't exciting. It doesn't give you a rush. It doesn't make you feel special. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. They want progress without pressure, growth without grind, results without routine. But the truth is, discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you say you want to become. Daily discipline means showing up when you don't feel like it. It means keeping promises to yourself when nobody else is holding you accountable. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline stays if you train it. Feelings change. Circumstances shift, but habits, once locked in, keep moving even when everything else feels uncertain. That's why discipline is more reliable than motivation. Motivation depends on emotion. Discipline depends on decision. The daily discipline teaches you how to work without applause. It teaches you how to push forward when progress feels slow and invisible. Most people quit not because the work is too hard, but because the rewards take too long. They underestimate the power of small actions done consistently. They don't see how 1 hour today connects to a completely different life years from now. But discipline sees it. Discipline understands that what you do today is casting a vote for the person you will become tomorrow. When you fall in love with daily discipline, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, should I do it? And start asking, how well can I do it? You remove emotion from the equation and replace it with commitment. You don't wait to feel ready. You don't wait to feel confident. You build confidence by doing the work over and over, especially on the days you feel unprepared. Discipline sharpens your character. It builds self-respect. Every time you follow through, you reinforce trust in yourself, and that trust becomes unbreakable. You start to walk differently. You start to think differently. You stop needing external validation because you know what you've put in behind closed doors. That quiet confidence can be shaken by opinions or setbacks. Daily discipline also teaches patience. It forces you to slow down and understand that greatness isn't rushed. There's no shortcut to mastery. You can't cram growth. You can't skip reps. You can't cheat consistency. Discipline demands that you stay long enough for the work to work. And while that feels frustrating in the moment, it protects you from chasing empty success that collapses under pressure. On the days when nothing seems to change, discipline reminds you that those days matter the most. Those are the days that separate people who talk from people who become. Anyone can work hard when results are showing. Anyone can stay committed when things are going well, but discipline shows up when progress is silent and the path feels lonely. That's where real transformation happens. Falling in love with daily discipline doesn't mean you enjoy every moment. It means you respect the process enough to stay consistent even when it is uncomfortable. You understand that the pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret lasts much longer. You choose the discomfort that builds you over the comfort that keeps you stuck. Over time, discipline becomes identity. It is no longer something you do, it is who you are. You don't chase success anymore. You attract it through standard structure and relentless consistency. You don't need shortcuts because you've learned to trust the long road. And once discipline is ingrained, nothing can take it away from you. Results are a byproduct, not the mission. But most people get that backward. They wake up every day hunting outcomes, chasing numbers, staring at goals, like those goals are going to move just because they were being watched. They measure their worth by what shows up on the scoreboard instead of what is happening in the work. And when the results come fast enough, they get frustrated, impatient, and ready to quit. Not because they can't do the work, but because they tied their motivation to something they don't fully control. The mission is what you do. Every day when the results are silent, the mission is the commitment to preparation, to improvement, to showing up whether or not there's a reward attached. Results don't show up on command. They don't respond to begging, hoping, or wishing. They respond to habits. They respond to consistency. They respond to the unseen work stacked up over time. When you make results the mission, you rush the process. You start cutting corners. You start looking for shortcuts, and shortcuts always come with a cost. When you understand that results are a byproduct, your focus changes. You stop obsessing over the finish line and start locking in on the steps. You stop asking how close you are and start asking how sharp you're becoming. You stop comparing your progress to someone else's timeline because you realize growth isn't a race, it's a build. And builds take time. People who chase results are easily shaken. One bad day makes them question everything. One setback feels like failure. But people committed to the mission stay grounded. They don't overreact to wins or losses because their identity isn't tied to outcomes. They know that one performance doesn't define them. What defines them is their standard, their routine, their willingness to do the work again tomorrow. Results are temporary. They come and go. If you only work hard when results are visible, you'll never last. But when you work hard because it's who you are, results have no choice but to follow. Not always immediately, not always how you expect, but eventually, inevitably, the work compounds whether you're watching or not. The danger of chasing results is that it puts pressure where it doesn't belong. Pressure belongs on preparation, not on performance. When you overload performance with expectation, you tighten up, you play scared, you stop taking risks. But when you trust the work, you perform freely. You move with confidence because you know you've done what was required long before the moment arrived. Focusing on the mission also protects you from ego. Results can inflate you or break you if you let them. One win can make you complacent. One loss can make you bitter. But when the mission stays central, you stay humble and hungry. You celebrate briefly, then you get back to work. You learn from failure without letting it define you. You keep building. The mission demands discipline when no one is watching. It demands patience when progress feels slow. It demands faith in the process when doubt creeps in. And that kind of commitment changes you. It builds resilience. It builds character. It builds a mindset that doesn't crumble under pressure. Results are just the receipt. They show what the work has already done. They are evidence, not purpose. When you make the mission about growth, preparation, and consistency, you free yourself from anxiety and frustration. You stop forcing outcomes and start earning them. And when the results finally show up, they don't surprise you because you know exactly where. They came from work when no one is watching, because that is where real separation happens. Anybody can show up when there's an audience, when there's praise, when there's a reward attached to the effort. Everybody can push a little harder when eyes are on them, but who you are in private, when there, no spotlight and no applause, that is what decides how far you go. The work done in silence builds the foundation that holds up everything people eventually see. Most people want to be seen more than they want to be prepared. They want recognition before they've earned respect. They want the moment without the mastery. But the truth is, exposure without preparation is dangerous. When you skip the unseen work, you may look ready, but you won. Be ready. And when pressure hits, what you avoided in private will show up in public. Working when no one is watching requires a different level of honesty. There is no one to impress, no one to compete with, no one to blame. It is just you and the standard you choose to live by. That's where excuses lose their power. That's where discipline either shows up or it doesn't. And every time you choose to do the work anyway, you strengthen something inside you that can't be taken away. The quiet work teaches you patience. It teaches you how to stay committed without immediate feedback, no likes, no praise, no validation. Just progress that only you can measure. And that kind of progress is the most dangerous kind because it's invisible until it's undeniable. While others are chasing attention, you're stacking skill. While others are talking about plans, you're building capacity. When no one is watching, you learn how to push past comfort. There's no energy from the crowd to carry you. No external pressure to perform. The effort has to come from within. That's how mental toughness is developed. That's how consistency becomes automatic. You stop needing motivation because the habit is already built. Working in silence also protects your focus. When you broadcast every move, you invite opinions, distractions, and doubt. You start adjusting your path to please people who aren't doing the work. But when you keep your head down, you stay locked in. You don't waste energy explaining yourself. You don't chase approval. You let the work speak when it's time. There's also humility in unseen work. It reminds you that you're always a student, that there's always more to learn, more to improve, more to refine. You stop acting entitled to success and start earning it daily. And that mindset keeps you grounded even when opportunities finally come. The work done when no one is watching builds trust in yourself. You know what you've put in. You know the hours you've logged, the sacrifices you've made, the discipline you've practiced. That knowledge creates a quiet confidence that doesn't depend on outcomes or opinions. When it's time to perform, you're not hoping things go well. You're prepared for them to. Most people only work hard when they feel seen, but the ones who last, the ones who rise and stay there, they understand that the real work happens away from the cameras. They don't rush the process. They don't complain about the lack of attention. They embrace it because they know that when the world finally starts watching, they won't need to explain how they got there. Detach your identity from external validation. Because the moment you let applause define you, you hand your power away. When your sense of worth depends on approval, you become controlled by opinions you can't manage and standards you didn't choose. One compliment can lift you up. One criticism can break you down. And suddenly your confidence is no longer yours. It belongs to the room you're standing in. That's a dangerous way to live. External validation is unstable. It changes with trends, moods, and perspectives. What people praise today, they may ignore tomorrow. What they criticize now, they may celebrate later. If your identity is tied to that shifting ground, you'll always feel uncertain. You'll start performing for acceptance instead of committing to growth. You'll make decisions based on what looks good rather than what builds you, and over time, that slowly erodes who you really are. When you detach from validation, you stop chasing reactions and start focusing on standards. You begin asking yourself if you showed up with integrity, effort, and discipline, instead of asking whether people noticed. That internal scoreboard becomes your reference point. And unlike opinions, it doesn't fluctuate. You either did the work or you didn't. You either honored your commitment or you didn't. That clarity brings peace. Living for approval keeps you stuck. It makes you afraid to fail, afraid to be misunderstood, afraid to take risks. You start playing small because you don't want to disappoint anyone. But growth demands discomfort. It demands mistakes. It demands moments where you won't be applauded. If your identity can survive those moments, you never stretch beyond what feels safe. Detaching from validation does mean you stop caring. It means you stop letting others decide your value. You can listen without being controlled. You can accept feedback without needing approval. You can be confident without being arrogant. That balance only comes when your foundation is internal, not external. When you build your identity on discipline and effort, criticism does to destroy you and praise does to distract you. You stay steady. You don't overreact to either. You understand that opinions are reflections of perspective, not measures of worth. And that understanding frees you. You move with purpose instead of pressure. External validation also creates dependency. The more you rely on it, the more you need it. One win isn't enough. One compliment isn't enough. You keep chasing the next hit of approval, and that chase never ends. When you step away from that cycle, you reclaim your energy. You put it back into the work, the growth, the process. And that is where real confidence is built. Detaching your identity allows you to be alone without feeling empty. You can work in silence without feeling invisible. You can improve without broadcasting progress. You don't need to prove yourself every day. You just need to be consistent. That quiet self-assurance is rare and it's powerful. When pressure comes, people rooted in validation panic. They worry about how they'll look if they fail. But people rooted in purpose keep moving. They understand that failure is feedback, not a verdict. They adjust, learn, and continue. Their sense of self is on trial. The strongest people in the room are not the loudest or the most praised. They are the ones who know who they are without being told. They don't need the crowd to believe in them because they've already done the work to believe in themselves. Consistency builds what talent cannot. And that truth makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Talent gets attention. It turns heads early. It makes things look easy. But talent without consistency is unreliable. It shows up when it feels like it and disappears when it doesn't. And sooner or later, that inconsistency gets exposed. No matter how gifted someone is, talent alone cannot sustain growth, pressure, or long-term success. Consistency is what turns potential into performance. It's the decision to show up repeatedly, especially on the days when nothing feels special. It's doing the basics over and over, even when you've already done them 1,000 times. That repetition might look boring, but it's powerful. It creates structure. It creates rhythm. It creates reliability. And reliability is what separates people who start strong from people who finish strong. Talent can give you a head start, but consistency determines how far you go. When challenges arise, talent often looks for exit. Consistency looks for a way forward. When progress slows, talent gets frustrated. Consistency stays patient. It understands that growth isn't linear. Some days you improve, some days you maintain, and some days you struggle. But every day you show up, you're still moving. Consistency also builds trust. Not just with others, but with yourself. Every time you follow through, you reinforce a belief that you can be counted on. That belief is powerful. It strengthens your confidence without needing external approval. You stop relying on bursts of motivation and start relying on habits. And habits don't argue with feelings, they just get done. Talent often depends on conditions. It shines when things are comfortable and collapses when things get hard. Consistency thrives under pressure because it's already used to discomfort. It doesn't need perfect circumstances. It adapts. It adjusts. It keeps going. That resilience is something talent alone can't create. People overestimate what talent can do in the short term and underestimate what consistency can do over time. Small efforts, repeated daily, create massive change. Skills sharpen. Weaknesses close. Confidence grows quietly, while others are waiting for the right moment or the right mood. Consistent people are stacking progress, and by the time anyone notices, the gap is already wide. Consistency humbles you. It forces you to respect the process. You can't rush it. You can't fake it. You can't skip it. You earn improvement one day at a time. That humility keeps you learning. It keeps you grounded. And it keeps you hungry. Talent can impress, but consistency sustains. Talent might open a door, but consistency keeps it open. When pressure rises and expectations grow, it's consistency that carries you through. You don't have to be exceptional every day. You just have to be committed every day. In the end, consistency creates identity. You are no longer someone who tries, you are someone who does. You don't rely on potential anymore because you've built proof through repetition. And that proof becomes unshakable. When others fade, hesitate, or quit, you remain. Not because you were the most talented, but because you were the most consistent.